5 ordinary humans awoke in a dimly lit, circular corridor. The metal beneath them was cold and foreign, the air carrying an artificial quality that spoke of recycled atmosphere. Disoriented and confused, they found themselves dressed in the same clothes they'd been wearing on Earth mere hours ago. Alex, a barista in her late 20s with perpetually coffee-stained fingers, had been walking home after closing up shop. Morgan, a burly sanitation worker with calloused hands, remembered hauling trash bags to the dumpster behind his apartment complex. Diana, a university professor with graying temples and sharp eyes, recalled grading final exams in her office. Richard, an accountant with receding hairline and permanent furrow between his brows, had been enjoying a quiet beer on his porch. And Zoe, a college student with dark circles under her eyes from too many all-nighters, had been cramming for finals in her dorm room. "Where the hell are we?" Morgan's voice echoed in the corridor, bouncing off the strange metallic walls embedded with pulsing blue lights. Diana approached a circular viewport along the curved wall, her breath caught. "I believe we're in space." The others rushed to the window. Beyond the thick glass lay an expanse of darkness punctuated by distant stars and a swirling nebula of purple and green gases. Earth was nowhere in sight. "This is impossible," Richard whispered, his accountant's mind struggling to calculate the probability of their situation. "We've been abducted by aliens," Zoe said matter-of-factly, her youth making the fantastic seem almost plausible. "Like in the movies." Alex pressed her palm against the viewport. "There's no sign of our captors. We need to stick together and figure out what's going on." The corridor hummed with alien machinery, occasional clicks and whirs suggesting automated systems at work. Fear and confusion permeated the air as they introduced themselves properly. 5 strangers bound by extraordinary circumstances. "I suggest we explore," Diana said, professor mode activated. "Standing here speculating won't provide answers." They moved cautiously through the curved corridor, which eventually opened into a vast central chamber. The room was dominated by a crystalline pedestal that rose from the floor at its center. The crystal itself pulsed with inner light, shifting colors from blue to green to purple in rhythmic patterns. "Don't touch anything," Richard warned, but Diana was already approaching the pedestal, academic curiosity overriding caution. "These markings," she murmured, pointing to symbols etched into the base. "They suggest a control interface of some kind." Before anyone could stop her, Diana's fingertips brushed the crystal's surface. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the pedestal, bathing all 5 humans in scintillating light. They collapsed to the floor as the energy wave passed through them, scanning and altering their genetic makeup at a fundamental level. When they regained consciousness minutes later, the crystal had dimmed to a soft glow. Each of them felt different, changed in ways they couldn't immediately articulate. Morgan reached for a small tool that had fallen from his pocket, only to watch it rise into the air before his fingers touched it. He jerked back in surprise, and the tool clattered to the floor. "Did anyone else see that?" he asked, voice trembling. Richard, attempting to brace himself against a wall, gasped as his hand passed through the solid metal. He yanked it back, and his fingers solidified again. Diana felt a strange disconnection, as if her consciousness had momentarily floated away from her body. For a split second, she could see the room from a position near the ceiling. Alex, running her fingers along a metal panel in agitation, watched in astonishment as the material softened beneath her touch, taking on the consistency of clay before hardening again when she pulled away. Zoe approached a terminal near the wall, its screen filled with incomprehensible alien script. As she stared at it, the symbols began to rearrange themselves into patterns she somehow understood. Information flowed into her mind directly from the machine. "The crystal did something to us," Alex said, stating the obvious. "It gave us abilities." "We need to understand what's happening," Diana said. and find a way home. Agreed, Richard nodded. Let's explore the rest of the station systematically. And so they set out. 5 ordinary humans transformed by alien technology, unaware that their journey had only just begun. Morgan discovered his telekinetic abilities first through accident, then through deliberate practice. Small objects were easiest: pens, tools, cups. But as hours passed, he found he could lift heavier items. The effort left him with splitting headaches and nosebleeds when he pushed too hard. But the rush of power was intoxicating. "Watch this," he grinned, lifting a chair without touching it, spinning it in midair. His confidence grew with each successful manipulation. Richard's power manifested as localized time manipulation. He could create bubbles where time moved differently, slowing to a crawl, or even freezing completely. Initially, these pockets lasted only seconds and extended inches from his body. But with concentration, he expanded their duration and size. "I think I'm affecting temporal flow," he explained, creating a bubble around a drop of water leaking from a pipe, freezing it in midair. Physics shouldn't allow this. Diana's consciousness could now detach from her body in a form of astral projection. Her physical form remained in place, appearing catatonic, while her mind explored the station, passing through walls and sealed chambers. "There's an entire laboratory down the eastern corridor," she reported after one such journey. "And something that looks like cryogenic pods." Alex discovered she could manipulate the fundamental properties of materials, changing density, malleability, even state of matter. Metal became putty in her hands. Brittle plastics gained flexibility. "It's like I can feel the molecular bonds," she explained, transforming a rigid piece of debris into a liquid puddle before re-solidifying it into a different shape. "I just tell them to change, and they listen." Zoe's techno-empathy proved perhaps the most immediately useful. She could interface with the station's systems directly through thought, bypassing security protocols and accessing information. "According to the mainframe, this is the Stellaris Research Outpost," she told them, eyes unfocused as her mind sifted through data streams. It was designed for genetic experimentation. "Experimentation on what?" Diana asked. Zoe's expression grew troubled. "On various species, including humans." The revelation hung heavy in the air. They were not random abductees, but subjects in an ongoing experiment. As they ventured deeper into the station, they discovered living quarters designed for humanoid occupants, but long abandoned. Laboratories filled with equipment whose purpose they could only guess at. And most disturbing of all, a chamber containing empty pods, human-sized and clearly designed to hold bodies. "Were there others before us?" Alex wondered aloud, running her fingers along the edge of a pod. Zoe accessed another terminal, her mind merging with the station's database. This place was operational for decades, maybe centuries. But something happened. The Stellaris, they're gone. "Gone where?" Morgan asked. "I don't know. The records indicate a civilization-wide event, possibly extinction." Zoe's voice was distant as she processed the information. This station was part of something called Experiment 15B, genetic hybridization research. "For what purpose?" Diana pressed. "Protection against something called the coming darkness. There are references to Protocol Phoenix as well." As if triggered by Zoe's discovery, a rumble passed through the station. Lights that had been dormant flickered to life along corridors. Panels previously dark now glowed with activity. "What's happening?" Richard asked, alarmed. Zoe's eyes widened as data flooded her mind. "The station is reactivating. Critical systems are powering up. Navigation data is loading." "Can you shut it down?" Alex asked. "I'm trying, but there are overrides in place. It's like..." Zoe struggled to articulate the sensation. "Like the station has been waiting for us." A new tension filled the air as they realized they weren't just passengers on an abandoned vessel. They were catalysts for its awakening. Their exploration took on greater urgency. In a command center with panoramic viewports, they watched as stars shifted position, suggesting the station was moving. Diana used her astral projection to scout ahead, while Morgan practiced his telekinesis on increasingly large objects. Richard created time bubbles to protect them when automated security systems occasionally activated, while Alex reinforced weakened bulkheads by manipulating their molecular structure. Zoe remained their guide and translator, interfacing with the station's computers to piece together their situation. "I think I've found something important," she announced after hours of mental communion with the mainframe. Historical records about the Stellaris civilization and their research. "What does it say?" Diana asked. The Stellaris were facing extinction from an aggressive species called the Vrexians. They created outposts like this one to conduct experiments on combining their genetic material with species from various worlds. They believed hybrid offspring would inherit both Stellaris abilities and the adaptability of the host species. "They were creating weapons," Morgan said grimly. "More like guardians," Zoe corrected. "The logs talk about preserving balance in the galaxy, not conquering it." "That doesn't justify abducting and experimenting on people," Alex argued. "I agree," Diana said. "But it seems we're the result of those experiments. The question is, what do we do now?" Their debate was interrupted by a proximity alarm. Through the command center viewport, they watched as a massive ship appeared from what looked like a tear in space itself. The vessel was sleek and predatory, covered in what appeared to be weapons arrays. "Is that Stellaris?" Richard asked. Zoe shook her head, fear evident on her face. "No. According to the database, that's a Vrexian warship." The alien vessel moved into position alongside the station. A communication request flashed across the command terminal. "They're hailing us," Zoe said. After a brief debate, Diana stepped forward. "Open the channel. I'll speak to them." The view screen activated, revealing a humanoid figure with scaled skin, elongated skull, and vertical pupils. The alien spoke, and the station's systems translated. "Unidentified life forms. You have activated Stellaris technology in violation of Vrexian sovereign claim. Identify yourselves immediately." Diana squared her shoulders. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We were brought here against our will by Stellaris technology. We mean no harm and seek only to return home." The Vrexian commander's eyes narrowed. "The Stellaris are extinct. Their technology and outposts belong to the Imperium by right of conquest. Your presence constitutes unauthorized use of Vrexian property. Prepare to be boarded and processed." The communication cut off abruptly. "Processed?" Morgan asked. "That sounds bad." "Very bad," Zoe confirmed, accessing defensive protocols. "Station records indicate the Vrexians typically dissect new species to assess biological usefulness." Richard paled. "We need a plan. Fast." The station's defense systems activated automatically, sealing bulkheads and deploying internal security measures. External sensors showed the Vrexian ship extending a docking tube toward one of the station's airlocks. "They're coming aboard," Alex said, her voice tight with fear. "And there's another problem. The station's navigation system is locked onto a course towards something called the Cassiopean Alliance, a populated sector with multiple inhabited worlds. If the Vrexians take control of the station and its technology," Diana began. "Devastation," Zoe finished. "The Stellaris were centuries beyond current galactic technology. In Vrexian hands, this station would be a planet killer." The five gathered in the command center, facing multiple crises simultaneously. Vrexian boarding parties minutes away, the station hurtling toward populated systems, and the mystery of their own transformation still unsolved. "There's something else," Zoe said, her expression distant as she communed with the station's AI. "The mainframe is directing me to a chamber beneath this level, something called the Nexus Core." "Is it a weapon?" Morgan asked. "I don't think so. It's the heart of the station, the source of its power, and the center of the Stellaris research. They made a decision quickly. Richard and Morgan would delay the Vrexian boarding parties using their abilities. Alex would accompany them, reinforcing bulkheads to slow the invaders' progress. Diana and Zoe would find this Nexus core and determine if it held answers or salvation. As they parted ways, Alex pulled Zoe into a quick hug. "Be careful." The younger woman nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. "You too." Morgan, Richard, and Alex hurried toward the main airlock where sensors indicated the Vrexians would breach first. Morgan used telekinesis to move heavy equipment into barricade positions, while Richard prepared to create time bubbles around the entry points. Alex ran her hands along the walls, strengthening the molecular bonds of key structural supports. Meanwhile, Diana and Zoe descended through rarely used maintenance shafts toward the station's core. Diana sent her consciousness ahead, scouting for dangers, while Zoe communicated with the station systems, following digital breadcrumbs toward their destination. "There," Diana pointed as they emerged into a vast spherical chamber. At its center floated what looked like a miniature galaxy, swirling energy contained within a transparent sphere. Consoles ringed the chamber, all connected to the central orb by tendrils of light. "The Nexus core," Zoe whispered, approaching a terminal. As her fingers touched the interface, her mind was flooded with information. It's not just a power source. It's the collected knowledge of the Stellaris civilization, and it's been waiting for us." "For us specifically?" Diana asked. "For whoever the crystal in the upper chamber deemed worthy. The 5 of us passed some kind of genetic compatibility test. We're carrying Stellaris DNA fragments now, integrated with our human genome." A distant boom shook the station. "They're inside," Diana said, her consciousness briefly extending upward to witness the Vrexian breach. In the airlock corridor, Morgan lifted 3 Vrexian soldiers with his telekinesis and slammed them against a wall. Their armor cracked, but held, and they responded with energy weapons that left scorch marks on the bulkhead behind him. Richard created a time bubble around another group, freezing them mid-stride, while Alex transmuted the floor beneath a third squad into a viscous gel that trapped their feet. But the Vrexians kept coming, more heavily armed with each wave. They were clearly experienced in boarding actions and adapted quickly to the humans' unusual defenses. "We can't hold them much longer," Morgan shouted into his communicator. "Whatever you're going to do down there, do it fast." In the Nexus core chamber, Zoe and Diana stood before the swirling energy orb. According to the station's records, this contains the accumulated knowledge of the Stellaris, Zoe explained. "Not just scientific data, but their history, culture, everything. And it can synchronize our abilities, make them work in concert." "How?" Diana asked. "We need all 5 of us. We need to place our hands on the core simultaneously." Diana relayed the message to the others, who were now in full retreat from the advancing Vrexians. "Kind of busy right now," Morgan grunted, as he telekinetically hurled a section of collapsed ceiling at their pursuers. "Fall back to the core," Diana instructed. "We'll make our stand there." Minutes later, all 5 humans gathered in the Nexus chamber, sealing the entrances behind them. The sounds of Vrexian cutting tools on the other side of the bulkheads told them their reprieve would be brief. "So we just touch it?" Richard asked skeptically, eyeing the swirling energy. "Together," Zoe nodded. "The Stellaris designed it to respond to the genetic markers they embedded in us. They positioned themselves around the Nexus core, each standing before a console. On Zoe's count, they placed their palms on the energy field simultaneously. Light exploded from the core, enveloping each of them in a cocoon of energy. Information flooded their minds, centuries of Stellaris knowledge, the purpose of the station, the nature of their transformation. More than mere data, they received understanding of how to use their abilities in harmony, how to synergize their powers to achieve effects greater than the sum of their parts. The energy cocoons faded, leaving them standing with newfound purpose and clarity. "I understand now," Diana said softly. We're not just carrying Stellaris abilities, we're carrying their legacy. A thunderous crash announced the Vrexians' imminent arrival. The main bulkhead to the chamber glowed red as cutting torches worked through the metal. "They're almost through," Alex warned. "Let them come," Morgan said with new confidence. "We know what to do now." As the bulkhead fell and Vrexian soldiers poured into the chamber, the 5 humans acted with perfect coordination. Morgan erected telekinetic barriers that deflected energy weapons. Richard created time bubbles that trapped clusters of Vrexians in temporal stasis. Diana projected her consciousness into the invaders' ranks, gathering tactical information and causing disorientation. Alex manipulated the very structure of the chamber, creating defensive positions and repairing damage. And Zoe interfaced with the station's systems, activating dormant defense protocols. The station itself seemed to respond to their unified will. Automated turrets deployed from hidden compartments. Repair drones swarmed to reinforce breached areas. Corridors reconfigured themselves to hinder Vrexian movement. But the invaders were numerous and determined. A squad broke through Morgan's telekinetic barrier and fired on Zoe, who was most vulnerable while connected to the station's systems. Richard froze the energy bolts in time, while Alex transmuted a section of flooring into a protective wall. The 5 retreated to the Nexus core itself, forming a circle around it as Vrexian forces surrounded them. "We can't keep this up forever," Richard warned, strain evident in his voice as he maintained multiple time bubbles. "We don't have to," Zoe replied, her mind still linked to the station. "The core has shown me what to do." At her mental command, the 5 channeled their combined power into the Nexus core. The orb's energy expanded, filling the chamber with blinding light. The very structure of the station began to change. Bulkheads collapsed inward. Consoles rearranged themselves. Corridors shifted configuration. The Vrexians fell back in confusion as the floor beneath them undulated. The entire station was transforming, reshaping itself according to designs embedded deep within its programming. When the metamorphosis completed minutes later, the research outpost had become something else entirely, a sleek, powerful starship built around the Nexus core. The 5 humans stood on a bridge that had formed from the core chamber, with Zoe at what was clearly the captain's position. Through viewports, they could see the Vrexian warship maintaining position nearby. Though it had backed off during the transformation, its weapons were powered but not firing. "What just happened?" Morgan asked, looking around the new bridge in awe. "Protocol Phoenix," Zoe answered. "The final stage of the Stellaris plan. This station was always meant to become a vessel, a ship carrying their legacy into the future when activated by compatible hybrids." "What about the Vrexians?" Alex asked. "I've disabled their ship's primary engines remotely," Zoe said, her mind still partially linked to the station's, now ship's, systems. "They can't pursue us if we leave." "Open a communication channel," Diana suggested. "Perhaps we can negotiate." The view screen activated, showing the Vrexian commander's face. His expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his body language suggested tension. "What is this deception?" he demanded. "You claim to be humans, yet you wield Stellaris technology with the skill of architects." "We told the truth," Diana replied calmly. "We are human, but we've been changed by Stellaris experiments. We didn't choose this, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The Vrexian hissed. "The Stellaris are a plague upon the galaxy, even in extinction. Their meddling with lesser species threatens the natural order." "We don't want conflict," Diana continued. "We ask only for safe passage. In return, we will not interfere with Vrexian interests." A tense silence followed as the commander considered her words. Finally, he spoke. "The Imperium does not recognize the autonomy of genetically manipulated constructs. However, we will grant provisional cessation of hostilities, while your status is determined by higher authorities. Depart this sector immediately." The communication ended abruptly. "That went better than expected," Richard observed dryly. He's afraid, Zoe said, reading data from sensors. Their scans can't fully analyze our ship's capabilities. They don't know what we can do. Neither do we, really, Alex pointed out. The five stood on the bridge of their new vessel, battered but resolute. Through the viewports, stars beckoned. So what now? Morgan asked the question on everyone's mind. Do we try to go back to Earth? And tell them what? Richard countered. That we've been abducted and transformed by aliens. That we're now flying an advanced starship? Best case scenario. They lock us in a lab for study. We could warn them about the Vrexians, Alex suggested. About the coming darkness, the Stellaris feared. Without evidence, we'd sound like lunatics, Diana said. And if we provided evidence, she let the implications hang in the air. Earth wasn't ready for confirmation of intelligent alien life, let alone threats from hostile species. There's something else to consider, Zoe said quietly. The Stellaris created us for a reason. They saw something coming. Something that threatened not just their civilization but many worlds. They trusted us with their legacy. That doesn't obligate us to fulfill their plans, Morgan argued. We didn't ask for any of this. True, Diana acknowledged. But power brings responsibility, whether we asked for it or not. They fell silent, each contemplating the choice before them. Return to Earth and their ordinary lives, if that was even possible now. Or embrace their transformation and the cosmic role the Stellaris had designed them for. The ship's navigation system is online, Zoe reported. I can set a course for Earth. Or, she hesitated, the nearest inhabited world in the Cassiopean Alliance. According to Stellaris records, they're a peaceful confederation of species. They might help us understand our purpose better. Alex looked at each of her companions in turn. We should vote. This affects all of us. Morgan shrugged. I was hauling garbage before this. Now I can move things with my mind. I say we see where this goes. Richard frowned thoughtfully. I have a daughter on Earth, but if there really is some cosmic threat coming, I want to make sure she has a future. I vote we learn more before deciding. Diana nodded. Knowledge before action, I agree. Zoe, Alex turned to the youngest member of their group. The techno-empath smiled faintly. I was failing my finals anyway. Might as well fail spectacularly and save the galaxy instead. Alex laughed despite herself. All right then, Cassiopean Alliance it is. Zoe interfaced with the navigation system, plotting their course. The ship hummed with power as its engines activated. Hold on, she warned. I've never piloted a starship before. The vessel surged forward, then disappeared in a flash of light, jumping to faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the Vrexian warship made no move to follow, its commander already composing a report to his superiors about the re-emergence of Stellaris technology and the unusual humans who controlled it. 5 ordinary people, a barista, a sanitation worker, a professor, an accountant, and a college student, hurtled through space toward an uncertain destiny. They carried within them the legacy of an extinct civilization and powers beyond human understanding. Whether they would become the guardians the Stellaris intended, or forge their own path, remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same. As the ship traveled through the brilliant tunnel of faster-than-light travel, Zoe monitored the systems, while the others explored their new vessel. What had been a research station was now a sleek starship, complete with living quarters, medical facilities, and various specialized chambers whose purposes they were still discovering. It's like the ship redesigned itself around our needs, Alex observed as they gathered on the bridge several hours later. There are exactly 5 crew quarters, each somehow customized to our preferences. The Stellaris were nothing if not thorough, Diana agreed. The ship's database is a treasure trove of information about their civilization. They were scientists and explorers primarily, not conquerors. Tell that to the Vrexians, Morgan snorted. They seemed pretty convinced the Stellaris were a threat. Historical perspective is often colored by the victor, Diana pointed out. With the Stellaris extinct, the Vrexians control the narrative. Speaking of which, Richard interjected, how long until we reach this Cassiopean alliance? Zoe checked the navigation display. About 3 days at current speed. We could go faster, but I'm still learning how to control the engines safely. Alex nodded. No rush. We could all use time to process everything. She gestured vaguely, encompassing their transformation, the ship, and their sudden cosmic importance. We should establish a routine, Diana suggested. Take shifts monitoring the bridge, continue exploring the ship, and most importantly, practice with our abilities. Agreed, Richard said. The more control we have, the better our chances of survival. And so they settled into a new normal as life could be aboard an alien vessel hurtling through space. Morgan spent hours in what they dubbed the training room, lifting increasingly heavy objects with his mind and improving his fine control. Richard practiced extending his time bubbles and even learned to accelerate time in small pockets rather than just slowing it. Diana mapped the ship through astral projection and began experimenting with projecting into the minds of others. Alex studied the molecular composition of various materials aboard, learning to transmute them with greater precision. Zoe, meanwhile, delved deeper into the ship's systems, gradually uncovering more about their situation. On the 3rd day of their journey, she called everyone to the bridge with excitement in her voice. I've found something important, she announced, as they gathered around the main console. Remember how the Stellaris mentioned a coming darkness? I think I know what they were referring to. She brought up a star chart on the main view screen. These red markers indicate worlds where the Stellaris detected unusual energy signatures, approximately 300 years ago. Watch what happens when I animate the data over time. The red dots multiplied and spread across the chart like an infection, encompassing entire systems before moving to the next. Whatever this is, it consumes energy at a fundamental level, Zoe explained. The Stellaris theorized it was some kind of interdimensional parasite, or entity, that feeds on the energy of living worlds. That's the darkness? Alex asked, staring at the visualization with growing horror. I think so. And according to their projections. Zoe fast-forwarded the animation. It should be reaching the edges of Cassiopean space right about now. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. So we're not just carrying the Stellaris legacy, Richard said slowly. We're their last-ditch effort to stop this thing. That would explain the urgency of their genetic program. Diana nodded. They weren't creating weapons against the Vrexians. They were creating weapons against this. Can we stop it? Morgan asked the practical question. The 5 of us against something that wiped out an advanced civilization? We're not alone, Zoe pointed out. The Cassiopeans are a coalition of 27 species, across 42 worlds. If we can convince them of the threat. That's a big if, Alex said. We're strangers in a stolen ship claiming a cosmic horror is coming to eat their worlds. The ship contains evidence, Diana countered. Stellaris research, sensor logs, projections. And we have our abilities, Richard added. Proof that the Stellaris were preparing for something significant. Their discussion was interrupted by an alert from the navigation system. We're approaching Cassiopean space, Zoe reported. I'm detecting a planetary system ahead with signs of advanced civilization. Are they aware of us? Alex asked. Yes, we're being scanned, and there's an incoming transmission. The view screen shifted to show a being with luminescent skin and large, compound eyes. It spoke, and the ship's systems translated. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Cassiopean Alliance territory. Your ship configuration is unknown to our database. State your identity and purpose. Diana stepped forward. I am Diana of Earth. My companions and I seek audience with Cassiopean authorities regarding an urgent matter affecting the security of your worlds. The being's compound eyes flickered, perhaps their version of blinking. Scan indicates your vessel is of Stellaris origin. The Stellaris have been extinct for 3 centuries. We are aware, Diana replied. We are carrying their legacy and critical information about a threat approaching Cassiopean space. We request permission to present our evidence to your leaders. A pause. Then, maintain position. An escort will arrive to guide you to Cassiopeia Prime. Any deviation from their course will be considered hostile action. The transmission ended. Well, that went better than our Vrexian encounter, Morgan observed. Don't celebrate yet, Richard cautioned. They're suspicious, as they should be. Within an hour, 3 sleek vessels approached their position. A new transmission directed them to follow the lead ship to a space station orbiting the 4th planet in the system. As they approached, the scale of Cassiopean civilization became apparent. The space station was massive, a sprawling structure accommodating vessels of various configurations. The planet below showed signs of extensive development: cities, transportation networks, energy collection arrays. Under Zoe's careful control, their ship docked at an assigned berth. A delegation awaited them, beings of various species, all wearing what appeared to be environmental suits. Quarantine protocols, Diana guessed. Sensible when meeting unknown life forms. The 5 humans disembarked cautiously. Alex had used her abilities to modify their clothing, strengthening the fabric and adjusting it to present a more unified appearance. A tall being stepped forward from the delegation. I am Ambassador Thalos of the Cassiopean Security Council. You claim to bring warning of a threat to our worlds. We do, Diana confirmed. And evidence to support our claims? You will be escorted to decontamination, then to the council chamber. Your vessel will remain sealed and under guard. The humans exchanged glances, but agreed to these terms. They were led through a series of chambers where beams of light scanned their bodies, and fine mists settled on their skin before evaporating. Finally, they entered a circular chamber where representatives of various species sat in tiered seating. At the center was a holographic display currently showing their ship. Ambassador Thalos addressed the assembly. These beings claim to possess a Stellaris vessel and knowledge of an approaching threat. They call themselves humans, a species not currently registered in Alliance databases. A murmur passed through the gathered representatives. Diana stepped forward. Honorable Council, we come seeking neither asylum nor resources. We bring warning. The Stellaris foresaw a threat they called the coming darkness, an entity or force that consumes the energy of living worlds. Their civilization fell to it 3 centuries ago, but not before they established outposts and research stations to prepare other species for its arrival. And you expect us to believe the Stellaris chose your unknown species as their messengers? A counselor with metallic skin asked skeptically. Not initially, Diana admitted. We were subjects in their experiments, transformed against our will. But we have inherited both their knowledge and certain abilities that may help combat this threat. To demonstrate, Morgan lifted several chairs telekinetically. Richard created a time bubble around a pitcher of water, freezing its contents mid-pour. Diana projected her consciousness to describe details of rooms she couldn't have seen. Alex transformed a metal object into liquid form and back again, and Zoe interfaced mentally with the council chamber's systems, briefly taking control of the holographic display. The council chamber erupted in alarmed exclamations and urgent discussions. Silence, Ambassador Thalos commanded. These demonstrations, while impressive, do not prove the existence of your claimed threat. The evidence is aboard our ship, Zoe said. Stellaris sensor logs tracking the entity's progress across multiple systems, projections of its path directly toward Cassiopean space. After further debate, the Council agreed to send scientific experts to examine the ship's data. For 3 days, the humans waited in comfortable but clearly monitored quarters, while Cassiopean scientists pored over the Stellaris records. On the fourth day, they were summoned back to the council chamber. The atmosphere had changed noticeably. Tension had replaced skepticism. "Our experts have verified your claims," Ambassador Thalos announced without preamble. "Long-range sensors have detected anomalous energy patterns at the edge of our territory, consistent with the Stellaris data. The entity you call the Darkness appears to be real and approaching." "How long do we have?" Alex asked. "At current progression, less than one standard month before it reaches inhabited systems." The ambassador's compound eyes fixed on them. "Now we must ask, what do the Stellaris records suggest as countermeasures?" The 5 humans exchanged glances. "The Stellaris believe the entity exists partially in another dimension," Diana explained. "Conventional weapons cannot harm it, but they theorize that beings with certain energy manipulation abilities might be able to disrupt its feeding process and force it back into its own dimension." "Beings like yourselves," Thalos concluded. "Yes," Diana nodded. "Though we're still learning to control our abilities, let alone combine them as the Stellaris intended." "Then you must accelerate your learning," another counselor stated flatly. "The Alliance will provide whatever resources you require, but time is short." And so began an intensive period of training. The Cassiopeans assigned their best scientists and energy specialists to work with the humans, helping them refine their abilities and understand how they might be applied against the approaching threat. Morgan learned to shape his telekinetic force into concentrated beams that could puncture dimensional barriers. Richard expanded his temporal manipulation to create pockets where the normal laws of physics could be temporarily suspended. Diana developed the ability to extend her consciousness across vast distances, serving as an early warning system. Alex mastered transmutation of energy itself, converting one form to another. And Zoe's connection to technology grew to encompass Cassiopean systems, allowing her to coordinate their efforts across multiple platforms. All the while, the entity drew closer. Outposts on the edge of Cassiopean space reported energy fluctuations, followed by communications blackouts. Evacuation efforts began for the outermost colonies, creating refugees and straining resources. 2 weeks into their preparation, Zoe called an emergency meeting with her human companions. "I've been analyzing the Stellaris data more deeply," she told them in the privacy of their quarters. "There's something they weren't telling us, or at least something they buried in the technical specifications." "What is it?" Alex asked, concern evident in her voice. "The Nexus core aboard our ship isn't just a repository of knowledge or a power source. It's a dimensional anchor point. The Stellaris designed it to serve as a focal point for our abilities, amplifying them enough to affect the entity." "That sounds like good news," Morgan said. "It is, except for one detail." Zoe's expression was grim. "The process will likely destroy the core, and anyone connected to it at the time." Silence fell over the group. "A suicide mission," Richard said finally. "That's what the Stellaris designed us for." "We don't know that for certain," Diana argued. "The data is incomplete." "But the implication is clear," Zoe insisted. "The energy required to force the entity back to its dimension would overwhelm the core and anyone linked to it." "Have you told the Cassiopeans?" Alex asked. Zoe shook her head. "Not yet. I wanted us to discuss it first." "We should tell them," Diana said firmly. "Full disclosure, perhaps their scientists can find an alternative." But the Cassiopean experts, after reviewing the new information, reached the same conclusion. The Nexus core could indeed serve as a weapon against the entity, but the energy backlash would likely be fatal to those wielding it. "We cannot ask this sacrifice of you," Ambassador Thalos told them during a private audience. "You came to warn us, not to die for us." "What are the alternatives?" Diana asked. "Evacuation of threatened systems, conventional defenses to buy time, research into other methods of interdimensional disruption." "And the probability of success without using the core?" Richard pressed. The ambassador's compound eyes dimmed slightly. Our scientists estimate less than 20%. The 5 humans retreated to consider their options. They had never asked for this burden, this responsibility. Each had been living an ordinary life on Earth just weeks ago. Now they faced a choice between likely death or the certain destruction of countless lives. I was nobody on Earth, Morgan said after a long silence. A guy who hauled trash and drank too much on weekends. Here I can make a difference. I have a daughter, Richard reminded them. I want to see her grow up. We might find another way, Alex suggested. The Cassiopeans are advanced. With more time. Time is what we don't have, Zoe interrupted gently. The outer colonies are already going dark. Diana paced the room, her scientist's mind working through the problem. What if we didn't all have to connect to the core? Perhaps 1 or 2 of us could channel the energy while the others provide support from a safer distance. They debated possibilities through the night, searching for a solution that wouldn't require the ultimate sacrifice. By morning, they had a plan, not perfect, but offering a glimmer of hope. The Cassiopean Council approved their proposal. Their ship, with its Nexus core, would be positioned at the vanguard of a defensive fleet. They would attempt to engage the entity at the edge of a populated system, drawing it away from inhabited worlds. The day of confrontation arrived all too quickly. Their ship, escorted by Cassiopean vessels, took position near the outer planet of a system already showing signs of the entity's approach. Sensors detected massive energy fluctuations as the darkness fed on the planet's core, draining it of vital energy. On the bridge, the 5 humans made final preparations. Morgan and Alex would maintain direct connection to the Nexus core, channeling its energy into a dimensional disruption field. Their abilities to manipulate physical forces made them best suited for this most dangerous role. Richard would create a temporal buffer around them, attempting to mitigate the energy backlash. Diana would project her consciousness into the entity itself, seeking vulnerabilities. Zoe would coordinate their efforts through the ship's systems while maintaining communication with the Cassiopean fleet. As the entity approached, visible now as a region of space where stars simply vanished, consumed by absolute darkness, they took their positions around the Nexus core. Whatever happens, Alex said, looking at each of her companions. I'm glad I got to know all of you. Morgan nodded solemnly. Same here. For what it's worth, this is better than hauling garbage. A ghost of a smile crossed Richard's face. Better than accounting, certainly. The entity is within range, Zoe reported, her voice steady despite the fear they all felt. Initiating sequence on my mark, now. Morgan and Alex placed their hands on the Nexus core. Energy surged through them as the core activated, amplifying their abilities to unprecedented levels. Morgan shaped the energy into a focused beam, while Alex transmuted it into a form that could pierce dimensional barriers. Richard created a time bubble around them, slowing the energy backlash. Diana projected her consciousness outward, searching for the entity's weakest point, and Zoe coordinated it all, balancing power flows and maintaining ship systems under enormous strain. The darkness reacted violently as their combined attack struck its leading edge. Tendrils of void lashed out, engulfing several Cassiopean vessels. The human ship shuddered under the onslaught, systems flickering as the entity attempted to drain its energy. Hold steady, Zoe called out, rerouting power to maintain their attack. Morgan grunted with effort, sweat pouring down his face as he channeled telekinetic force on a scale he'd never attempted. Can't hold this much longer. The dimensional barrier is weakening, Diana reported, her physical body limp in her chair as her consciousness rode the attack into the very heart of the darkness. I can sense a thinning. Push harder. Alex's hands had melded with the core, her ability to transform matter extending to her own flesh as she became a living conduit for its power. Richard, the buffer is failing. Richard strained to maintain the time bubble, blood trickling from his nose with the effort. 10 more seconds. That's all I can give you. The ship's structure groaned under forces it was never designed to withstand. Alerts flashed across Zoe's consciousness as systems failed one after another. 5 seconds, she shouted. Diana, target coordinates. There! Diana's consciousness located the precise point where the dimensional barrier was thinnest. Bearing 227 Mark 45. Morgan and Alex redirected their attack with the last of their strength. A blinding flash erupted at the point of impact. And for a moment, reality itself seemed to tear open. The darkness writhed and contracted, pulling back from the dimensional rift like a wounded animal. In that instant, the Nexus core overloaded. Energy cascaded through the ship's systems and into the humans connected to it. Morgan and Alex screamed as power surged through their bodies. Richard's time bubble collapsed entirely. Diana's consciousness snapped back to her body with such force that she lost consciousness. And Zoe, still linked to the ship's systems, experienced every failure and overload as if it were happening to her own nervous system. The bridge plunged into darkness as primary power failed. Emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, revealing the 5 humans collapsed around the now darkened Nexus core. Ambassador Thalos's voice came through on emergency channels. Human vessel, respond. The entity is retreating. Repeat. The darkness is retreating back to interstellar space. What is your status? Silence answered him as the ship drifted, its occupants unmoving. Hours later, medical teams from the Cassiopean fleet boarded the vessel. They found the 5 humans alive, but barely, each hovering on the brink of death from massive energy exposure. With careful haste, they transferred the humans to medical facilities on the nearest Cassiopean world. For days, the outcome remained uncertain. The humans had absorbed energy levels that should have been instantly fatal. Only the unique properties granted by their Stellaris hybridization had allowed them to survive it all. One by one, they regained consciousness. First Diana, then Richard, Zoe, Morgan, and finally Alex, who had borne the brunt of the core's energy backlash. When they were all finally able to speak with one another, Ambassador Thalos brought remarkable news. The entity has been driven back to the void between galaxies, he told them in the medical facility. Our scientists believe the dimensional disruption you created has wounded it severely. It may be centuries before it recovers enough to threaten inhabited worlds again. The core? Zoe asked weakly. Destroyed, as expected. But your ship remains largely intact. Cassiopean engineers believe it can be repaired, though without the Nexus core, many of its advanced functions will be lost. And our abilities? Morgan asked, attempting to lift a cup from his bedside table with telekinesis. It trembled, but didn't rise. Diminished, but not gone, Thalos replied. Our medical experts believe you may recover some function with time and rehabilitation. The Stellaris changes to your genetic structure remain, but the energy that amplified them has been largely expended. The 5 absorbed this information silently. They had saved countless lives at the cost of what had made them extraordinary. What happens now? Alex finally asked. That is for you to decide, Thalos said. The Cassiopean Alliance offers you citizenship and positions commensurate with your knowledge and abilities, should you wish to stay, or we can assist you in returning to your homeworld. Earth, Diana murmured. It seems so distant now. We would be returning as different people, Richard pointed out. Not just because of what we've experienced, but literally changed at a genetic level. And we'd have to explain where we've been, Morgan added. Not sure fighting in interdimensional darkness with alien powers would go over well. Zoe smiled faintly. My parents would just be happy I'm not failing classes anymore. They laughed, the sound fragile but genuine. The laughter of survivors who had faced death together and emerged changed but alive. In the days that followed, they discussed their options extensively. Return to Earth and attempt to resume their former lives? stay with the Cassiopeans and help prepare for the entity's possible return. Use their repaired ship to explore the galaxy as the Stellaris might have intended. Each possibility had its appeal and its drawbacks. Earth represented home and familiarity, but would never be the same now that they had seen beyond its boundaries. The Cassiopean alliance offered purpose and appreciation for their sacrifice, but would always view them as outsiders with Stellaris legacy. And exploration promised adventure, but also uncertainty and danger. A month after their confrontation with the darkness, they gathered on an observation deck overlooking the space station where their ship was being repaired. Stars glittered beyond the transparent dome, countless worlds waiting to be discovered. "I've been thinking," Alex said, breaking a comfortable silence. "What if we didn't have to choose just one path?" The others looked at her curiously. "We could return to Earth occasionally, check on family and friends. We could work with the Cassiopeans to prepare for the entity's return. And in between, we could explore, map the galaxy, find other Stellaris outposts, maybe even locate other hybrids like ourselves. The best of all options," Diana nodded thoughtfully. "Our ship would need a name," Morgan pointed out. "Something better than Stellaris Research Outpost." "Phoenix," Zoe suggested immediately, "after the protocol that transformed it, and us." Richard smiled. "Phoenix it is." As they stood together watching the stars, 5 ordinary humans transformed by extraordinary circumstances. They felt the weight of the Stellaris legacy, balanced by the freedom of their own choices. They had not asked to be changed, to be thrust into cosmic conflict, to bear the responsibility of worlds beyond their own. But having shouldered that burden, having sacrificed and survived, they now faced a future limited only by their imagination and courage. The Phoenix would fly again soon, carrying its crew of reluctant heroes to whatever awaited them among the stars. And somewhere, in the void between galaxies, the darkness nursed its wounds, diminished but not destroyed. The battle had been won, but the war, as wars so often do, would continue in another time, another place, and when it did, the 5 would be ready.